How was your day? Maybe somewhere in it you heard a quiet music, not a real song, just a pull towards somewhere else, and you couldn't follow it. There was a chieftain in old Ireland named Bran. One evening a music followed him home that no one else could hear. If today some far-off pull found only you, he would understand. So let yourself be carried the same way tonight. Salt air, a gray shore, a small hide boat waiting on the stones. You don't have to row, just drift out with him. But first see the end. A green headland. People on the rocks who only know his name from old songs, and one young man in the boat, aching to touch home again. He leaps for the shore, his foot touches Irish soil, and the years he outran all catch him at once. Remember that? For later. Some doors only open one way. So here's the question that holds the whole story. Why would a man sail past sickness, past sorrow, past death itself, and then turn his boat back toward home? He had been promised a land with no graves, no winter, no goodbye, everything we lose kept safe forever. And still, something in him would look back. We'll come to why. Maybe you know that pull from both sides, wanting the place where nothing ends, and wanting the one small fire that was only ever yours. This story lives in that ache. This is what we do here. Every week, one old story. One night. Something that happened long ago, beyond the western wave, and still has something to say to you. Get comfortable now. Soften the pillow. Find your warmth. If you drift off before the boat reaches shore, that's all right. The old sea has carried sleeping travelers before. This is only the beginning of the voyage. The strangest islands, the deepest crossing, those are still ahead. But not tonight. Tonight, just this first quiet shore. If tonight felt like something, subscribe. We'll be here next week, another story, another night like this. Now back to ours, and the music in Bran's hall. So go back with me now, before the boat, before the woman, to an ordinary evening in Bran's fort, when the feast was loud and the fire was high and the day had been good. The talk wound down, the fire settled, and then a music began, sweet and slow, coming from no harp, no mouth, no corner of the room. It simply was, all around them. One by one, every man at the table fell asleep where he sat. Only Bran stayed awake. The music was so gentle it should have drowned him too. Instead, it kept him. He listened until his eyes grew heavy at last, and when he woke, the hall was ordinary again, but something lay beside him that had not been there before. A branch of white blossom, heavy with silver. He lifted it, and the little bells made the very music he had heard. The far-off song had left him something to hold. He carried it back to the hall that night and would not set it down. He did not yet know what it meant, but the door had opened, and someone was coming to call him through it. The figure in the doorway stepped inside, though the doors stayed shut. A tall woman, pale as birch and moonlight, with hair to her waist and a song already in her throat. No one had opened the door for her. No one could say how long she had stood there. She was simply present, the way a feeling arrives before you can name it. She looked at the branch in Bran's hand, then at Bran. And when she spoke, it was not really speech. It was the same music, finding words at last. She sang of a branch from a far apple tree, of crystal and of silver. She sang of where it grew, and the warriors, half asleep, leaned in without meaning to. There is an island, she sang, far in the western sea, held up on 4 pillars of bright bronze, a place you have always half believed in. Maybe you have. Most of us have. On that island, she sang, there is no sharp word and no harsh sound. No sickness wears the body down. No grief, no grave. Nothing you love is ever taken back. Picture that for a moment. Not as a place far away, but as a feeling you carry. The version of your life where nothing you loved was ever lost. That is what she offered. There is a great plain there, she sang, where games are played and chariots run, where silver and white bronze gleam, and music falls from the air like rain that never wets you. She named the island many ways, the land of women, the plain of delights, Emain of the apple trees, so many names for one ache, the ache for a place that does not hurt. The hall had gone utterly still. The fire forgot to crackle. Every man who had been half asleep was now wide awake, and every man who had been awake could not move. Then she turned the song toward Bran himself. Not the island now. Him. Rise, she sang. Do not let sleep weigh you down. The voyage is yours if you will take it. Maybe you know that kind of invitation. Not loud, not forceful, just a quiet voice saying, there is more than this, and it is meant for you. The hardest kind to refuse. She did not wait for an answer. She had given the branch, sung the road, and named the place. The rest was his, and as quietly as she had come, she began to go. And here's the strange part. As she vanished, the silver branch leapt from Bran's hand and went with her. He grasped at it. It was already gone. Only the song stayed. The branch had only ever been a messenger. It brought the song, and when the song was delivered, it returned to where it belonged. What it left behind was the longing it had carried. The warriors woke fully now, rubbing their eyes, sure they had dreamed it. But the petals on the floor said otherwise, and Bran was already changed. You could see it in how he stood. He did not speak for a long while. When he did, his voice was low. We sail, he said, in the morning, to find the place she sang of. And no one at that fire laughed. Among them sat a young man named Nekton, the son of Bran, barely 20, copper-haired, quick, hungry for anything larger than the life he had been handed. He had 3 brothers, all older, all settled. Nekton was the youngest, the spare, the one whose name came last at every gathering. A voyage to the edge of the world was exactly his size. Maybe you have felt that too. Being the last one named, the one nobody quite worries about, and how a single chance to matter can light a whole young life on fire. When Bran asked who would come, Nekton was on his feet before the words had finished. So were others. By morning the company would number 3 nines, 27 men and Bran. 3 companies of 9. In the old reckoning, that was not just a number, it was a complete thing, a whole made for a journey. Bran felt the rightness of it settle over the hall. But the song had carried more than an invitation. Inside its sweetness was a single quiet rule. The woman had sung it almost in passing, the way the most important things are often said. When you reach the islands, the song had said, you may not come back as you went. Set foot on your own land again, and the land will not know the man you have become. Do not let your foot touch Ireland again, was the heart of it. A rule small enough to forget. And we know already, don't we, how this kind of rule tends to be remembered too late. Bran heard the rule and held it the way you hold a coin you mean not to spend, carefully, sure of yourself, not yet knowing how long the road or how heavy the hand that forgets. That night, no one in the fort truly slept. They readied the boat by torchlight, a currash of hide stretched over woven wood, light enough to carry, strong enough to ride the deep. They packed water and dried meat, oars and spare hides, a harp wrapped in wool. Small comforts for an immeasurable road, as if anything you could pack would matter where they were going. Nekton worked harder than any of them, while older men grew quiet and thoughtful. He was all motion, all gladness. He did not feel the weight of the rule, he only felt the open door. Stay with him for a moment, the gladness, not the warning, because everything that follows is sweeter and sadder, if you remember how happy he was the night before they sailed. Bran did not sleep either. He sat above the shore, watching the water move under the moon, listening for the song. It did not come, but the want of it was louder than any music. He thought of all he was leaving, the fort, the fields, the faces he knew, the grave of his own father on the hill, everything ordinary suddenly precious, the way it always is the night before you leave it. And maybe that is the first secret of this story, that the deathless island only burned so bright because the dying world he stood in was already so dear to him. You need both to feel the pull. Dawn came gray and soft over the water. The company gathered on the shingle. No drums, no crowds, just 28 men, a small boat, and a road no chart had ever held. They pushed the boat into the shallows. The cold took their legs. One by one they climbed in, until only Bran stood on the stones, with one foot still on Ireland. He held there a heartbeat longer than he needed to. Then he lifted his foot from the land of his birth and stepped into the boat. He would not stand on that shore again as the man he was. The oars dipped, the shore drew back. The fort on the hill grew small, then faint, then was only a green smudge under a paling sky. And then there was nothing behind them but water. For the first hours they rowed in silence, each man alone with what he had left. The only sounds were the oars, the slap of the swell, and the breath of 28 men going somewhere no one returned from quite the same. The sun climbed and crossed and fell. No land appeared. The sea simply went on, the same in every direction, until direction stopped meaning anything at all. Night came down without a shore in sight. They shipped the oars and let the boat drift. Above them, more stars than any of them had ever seen wheeled slowly over the deep. And lying there, rocked on the deep, with home gone and the islands not yet found, Bran felt something he had not expected. Not fear. Peace. The strange wide peace of having finally let go. Let the boat drift a while, and let me tell you something the old Irish believed. They did not think the other world was far above the sky. They thought it was close, just over the next wave. To them, the line between worlds was thin. A mist could be a doorway. A fort on a hill could open inward. The sea, most of all, was a road, and the islands of the blessed lay at its far end. They called those islands many names: the land of the young, the land of women, the plain of honey, always westward, always over water, always a place where the cruelest law of all, that things end, simply did not run. And they told of voyagers, Imrama. They called these tales, men who rode west looking for that place. Some found wonder, some found warning. Almost none came home unchanged. Bran's is the oldest of them all. So when you picture Bran adrift under those stars, picture him not lost, but on a road his whole people half believed in. He was rowing toward the oldest hope there is. Now, back to the water. On the second day, the sea changed. Not the water, the feeling of it. The swells grew long and slow and warm, as if the ocean itself were breathing in its sleep. The men felt watched, and not unkindly. Then far ahead, something moved across the surface that was not a wave. A shape, tall and bright, coming toward them, not in a boat, but in a chariot, drawn over the water by a single white-maned horse. The men stopped rowing. Some reached for spears. Bran lifted a hand to still them. Whatever this was, no spear would matter to it. You can feel that. Sometimes the difference between a danger and a power. The chariot came on, and now they could see the driver clearly. A giant of a man, sea-gray hair and beard threaded with green, a mantle that changed color like the surface of the ocean itself. This was Manannan, son of Lear. The sea was his country. Every wave, every depth, every drowned and shining thing belonged to him. And he had come, it seemed, simply to meet the small boat crossing his floor. Bran called across the water. "Where do you ride?" he asked, "when there is no road?" And the sea god smiled and answered with a thing that turned the whole world on its edge. "You think you sail on the sea," the god said, "but to me there is no sea. What you call waves, I call a flowering plain. What you call deep water, I call meadows full of flowers." Picture it the way he showed it. Where Bran saw gray rollers, the god saw blossoming branches. Where Bran saw leaping fish, the god saw calves and lambs at play in spring grass. One place, two worlds, both true. And maybe that is the deepest comfort in this whole story, that the same hard world you cross so wearily might be, from another place, a meadow in flower. That nothing is only what it looks like to tired eyes. The god looked kindly on the small crew. He did not warn them off. He blessed the voyage. "Row on," he said. "The island the woman sang of is real. It is not far now, as my country measures distance." But he told them more. He spoke of things to come, riddles then, plain only later. Of a great birth that would come from the sea to the land of Ireland. Of ages turning, the men understood little. Bran kept every word. Here's the part the old tellers never make obvious. The god who ruled all the sea did not envy the men their voyage. He sent them on gently, as if even a god understood the worth of looking for the blessed place yourself. Then the white-maned horse turned, the chariot wheeled, and the sea god rode off across his flowering meadow until distance swallowed him. The gray sea returned, but the men would never quite see it the same way again. They rode on through the strange bright water, and now that a god had named the island real, the men's tiredness fell away. Even the older ones, who had set out grave, began to feel the lightness Nekton had carried all along. As they went, the water grew so clear that they could see down through it, and what they saw below stole the breath from every man aboard. Beneath the keel was not darkness, it was a country. Forests swayed beneath them. Herds of pale beasts moved across drowned meadows, and here and there, far down, the shapes of halls and figures, a whole sunken world going about its life, unbothered by the boat passing far above. This was Manannan's roofed kingdom. The men understood, his sea seen the way he saw it, a land with the water for a sky. They rowed across the roof of another world, and held their oars gently so as not to disturb it. Have you ever passed quietly above something vast and alive and never known? A whole ocean of it under your ordinary day? The old story says that is always true. The depths are always there, just under the surface you walk on. Slowly the water clouded again, and the sunken kingdom slipped from view, and they were on the plain gray sea once more. But ahead, low and green and certain on the horizon, at last there was land. An island, real solid green, the first land they had seen since Ireland fell behind them. The men cried out and bent to the oars, and the little boat fairly flew across the water toward it. But as they drew near, something about the island felt wrong in a way none of them could name. There were people on the shore, a great crowd of them, and every single one was laughing. Laughing and gaping and pointing at the boat. Not a glad laughter, an endless one. The same wide grins, the same shaking shoulders over and over, as if they could not have stopped if they tried. Bran called to them. No answer came, only more laughter. He asked their names, their island, their king. They only laughed and pointed and shook, as though his words were the funniest thing in all the world. This is the island of joy, the old tale calls it, but stay with how it actually felt, not joyful, trapped. A whole island of people lost inside a single feeling, unable to step out of it long enough to answer a stranger. Bran did not want to land. Something in him knew the danger of a place that pulls you into one feeling forever, but the company needed to know, was this a curse, or simply the way of the island? One of his men volunteered to go ashore and learn the truth, a single scout, to set foot on the island, walk among them, and come back with an answer. Bran did not like it, but he let the man go. The scout waded to the shore and stepped up among the crowd. He turned to call back something to the boat, and in the middle of that turn, his face changed. His mouth fell open and he began to laugh. He laughed and gaped and pointed at the boat, exactly like the others. He did not come back. He did not even seem to know there was a back to come to. The island had simply taken him in. The men called his name across the water. He laughed at the sound of it. They called again. He only laughed harder, pointing as though his own name were a joke he had finally understood. Bran understood then. There was no rescuing him. To step ashore and pull him out, a man would have to land, and to land was to be taken too. The island did not hold its people. It became them. So Bran made the hardest call a leader makes. He gave the order to row, to leave one of their own laughing on a green shore, and turn the boat away and carry the rest toward whatever came next. They rowed in silence for a long time after the laughing island. No one spoke of the man they had left. But each of them carried him now, the first to be lost, and not the last. Bran felt the weight of it most. He was the one who had let the scout go. He was the one who had given the order to leave. That is the quiet cost of leading. You carry the choices no one else will. Only Nekton, after a while, broke the quiet. He moved to sit by Bran and said nothing wise, nothing comforting. He just stayed near. Sometimes that is the only thing that helps. You have probably been that for someone. The sea carried them on. Day folded into night and night into day, and they lost the count of them. Time at sea grows soft. The old story is already showing us how easily a man can lose his grip on it. They passed other islands far off that they did not land on. One that rang with the sound of birds singing the hours. One ringed in silver mist that never lifted. They marked them and rowed by. Bran had learned his lesson on the laughing shore. He would not land on every wonder. He was looking for one island only, the one the woman had sung of. The rest could keep their songs. An island of white birds rose on their left, and the birds sang in a way that sounded almost like words, like a chant of all the hours of the world. The men slowed to listen, and Bran let them, briefly. The song was beautiful, but Bran heard the danger under the beauty. A man could listen to such singing forever and forget to row, forget to eat, forget the island he was looking for. He gave the order, gently, to go on. Do you feel the pattern forming? Every island is a kind of trap dressed as a gift. Laughter that never ends. song that never stops. Each one offers a single sweetness, forever, and forever is the trap inside the sweetness. Bran began to wonder whether the island he sought would be different, whether a place with no death might be the deepest trap of all, one sweetness, life without ending, offered forever. He pushed the thought down, but it had been thought. They came to a strait where the water ran swift and bright between two pillars of stone that rose straight from the sea. The current pulled them through fast, and there was nothing to do but trust it and hold on. Beyond the pillars, the sea opened wide and calm again, and the light changed. It grew warmer, softer, the color of honey held to a candle. The men felt it on their faces and grew quiet with a strange contentment. This was the threshold, though they did not know it yet. The light here belonged to the Blessed Islands. They had crossed out of the ordinary sea and into the waters that lapped against the other world itself. Nekton was the first to see it. He stood, pointing, his voice cracking with hope. Ahead, low and shining and ringed in pale blossom, lay an island, and even from far off, it felt like the one they had crossed the world to find. But Bran held them back. Once already a beautiful shore had cost them a man. He would not race in. They would come slowly this time, and watch and learn what kind of island this was before a single foot left the boat. As they neared, they saw the island was not crowded with laughing figures. Its shore was quiet. Green hills rose gently, white with blossom. Silver streams ran down to a calm harbor. It was exactly what the woman had sung. And that frightened Bran a little. Why frightened? Because a thing that matches your deepest wish exactly is a thing to be careful of. The world rarely gives us precisely what we longed for. When it seems to, that is the moment to look twice. Then on the bronze landing place at the edge of the harbor, a figure appeared, a woman regal and calm, in a gown of sea green and gold. She did not laugh. She did not sing. She simply looked at the boat and waited. She lifted one hand, not in command, but in welcome. And in the other hand she held a coil of gray wool thread, the kind a woman spins by a fire. Such an ordinary thing, in such an extraordinary place. Bran called a greeting across the water, careful and courteous, but he did not steer in. He had learned he would speak first from the safety of the boat, and let the island reveal itself before he trusted it. "Come ashore, Bran, son of Feeble," she called, and the use of his name stopped his breath. He had not given it. She knew it already, as the woman in the hall had known it. He was expected here. "Welcome is ready for you," she said, "and for every man with you. There is rest here, and food, and no harm. You have come a long way. You may stop now. You may simply stop." You may simply stop. Maybe those are the most dangerous words a tired traveler can hear. After so much sea, so much loss, the offer to stop forever lands like the kindest thing in the world. And Bran felt it land. Still he hesitated. The laughing island had taught him fear of a welcome too easy. He held the boat just off the shore, caught between his exhaustion and his caution, and could not make his hand give the order to land. So the queen made the choice for him. Gently, she drew back her arm, and with the ease of a woman casting a line, she threw the coil of gray thread out across the water toward the boat. The thread flew further than any thread should. It reached the boat, and Bran, without thinking, did what a man does when something is thrown to him. He put up his hand and caught it, and the moment he did, the thread stuck fast to his palm. He tried to shake it loose. He could not. The thread held to his hand as though it had grown there, and the woman, smiling, began to draw it in, and with it, gently, irresistibly, the whole boat toward the shore. There was no violence in it, no force a man could fight, just a thread, and a gentle pull, and a shore that wanted them. Sometimes the things that take us in completely are the softest things of all. The boat touched the bronze landing with the softest of bumps. The thread fell away from Bran's hand, its work done, and the chief of the women stood above them, smiling, holding out her hand to help the first man ashore. Bran looked at her hand. He looked at his men, weary to the bone. He looked at the green and blossoming hills behind her, and he thought, what harm in resting, just for a while, just to be still, and he took her hand. He stepped onto the bronze, solid land under his feet for the first time since the Laughing Island. It held him. It did not take him. He let out a breath he had not known he was holding and turned to help his men. One by one the company came ashore. 27 men and Bran, stepping onto the island the whole world had told them was only a dream, and not one of them, in that first glad moment, thought of how they might ever leave. The queen led them up from the harbor along a path of pale stone, through orchards heavy with white blossom and red fruit at once, flower and harvest on the same branch, as though the island held every season together. Birds sang but softly, streams ran but quietly, nothing on the island was loud, nothing was harsh. After a lifetime of a world that scrapes and clamors, the men walked through a gentleness so complete it almost ached. Maybe you know that ache too, when something is finally completely safe, and your body does not quite know what to do with the safety, because it has been braced for so long. The men felt their shoulders come down for the first time in years. At the top of the path stood a great house of polished bronze and pale wood, its doors thrown open, warm light within. The queen turned at the threshold and smiled. "This is yours now," she said, "for as long as you wish." For as long as you wish. The men did not yet understand how strange those words would prove. On that island a wish could stretch into something with no edges, but that night they only heard kindness, and they walked inside. Inside was a hall finer than any king's, a table that held every good thing and never emptied, soft couches, one for each man, and the queen had companions, as many women as there were men, gentle and glad to see them. They ate. They had not known how hungry they were. The food tasted of everything they had ever loved and lost, bread from a childhood hearth, fruit from a summer long gone. Each bite was a memory made whole again. And when they had eaten their fill, a tiredness came over them, not the heavy tiredness of grief, but the sweet weight of safety, the kind of sleep you only fall into when, at long last, nothing is going to hurt you. That first sleep on the land of women was the deepest of their lives. No watch was set, no fear stood guard. They simply slept, every one of them, while the gentle island kept its endless soft light burning low around them. When they woke, the light outside was the same soft gold. Had it been a night? A day? There was no way to tell, and no reason to ask. The queen brought them to the morning table, and the good day simply began again. And here is where the danger of this island shows itself. Not in chains, not in walls, in the simplest thing of all, that every day was good, and every day was the same, and there was nothing to mark one from the next. Think about what marks your own days: a struggle, a change, a loss, a thing that grows or fades. Take all of that away. Leave only the good, and the days stop counting themselves. They blur into one long golden now. So the men settled. They feasted and rested and walked the blossoming hills. They were happy, truly happy, in the way you are when nothing aches. And the days they did not count began very quietly to pile up behind them. Bran was happy too. The grief of the lost scout faded. The fear of the laughing island faded. Even the memory of Ireland grew soft and distant, like a story he had once been told rather than a home he had once lived in. And maybe that is the gentlest warning the old story gives, that a perfect peace can quietly erase you, that to forget all your pain, you must also forget all your home. The two are tangled. You cannot lose one without the other. For now, though no one was troubled, the men of Bran lived in the long golden day and loved it, and asked for nothing more. They had found the island at the end of the world. They had stopped. They had simply stopped. But the old story is patient. It lets them rest. It lets us rest with them, because it knows what they have forgotten, that a thread was caught, a foot was lifted from Ireland, and a rule was made that has not yet been broken. Hold that. Let them sleep in the gold a while, and let me tell you about the branch, the silver apple branch that started it all. In the old Irish mind, it was no mere ornament. It was a passport between the worlds. Only one who had been chosen by the other world could carry such a branch. It marked a man as called. To hold the silver bough was to be told, quietly, a door has opened for you, and you alone may walk through it. And the apple ran through all the Celtic stories of the blessed land. Avalon itself means the place of apples. The fruit that does not rot, on a tree that does not die, in a country where nothing ends. The apple was the other world's own sign. So when the woman set that branch in Bran's hand, the old listeners understood at once. This was no idle visit. The deathless country had reached across the sea and chosen a mortal man. Such a thing changes a life and rarely lets it go gently. Keep the branch in mind as the story goes on. The thread that caught Bran's hand, the apples that never fall, They are all the same reaching, the other world pulling a man in. Now, back to the Golden Island, where time has begun to do its quiet work. How long did they stay? The story says it felt like a single year. One good year, turning slowly through seasons that all looked like spring. And not a man among them could have told you it was anything more than that. But the old tellers lean in here and warn us. Time on the land of women did not run as time runs at home. A year inside that golden light could be 100 years on the green shores of Ireland. The island kept its own slow clock. While Bran rested through one sweet year, children were born in Ireland and grew old and died. Forts rose and fell. His own name slipped out of memory and into song, and he did not feel a single day of it pass. Maybe you have felt a smaller version of this, a stretch of life so even and content that you looked up one day and could not believe how much time had gone. The good years are the quietest thieves, they take the most and ask the least. For most of the company this was no loss. They had wanted exactly this, to step out of the river of time and rest on its bank forever. They had no wish to go home. Home had been hard here. Nothing was hard. But not all of them. There was one heart on that island the golden light could not fully quiet. One man who, even surrounded by everything anyone could want, found a small cold spot inside that would not warm. And it was the youngest of them, Necton, the eager boy who had leapt up first to come. He had everything now, rest, plenty, gentleness, no end to any of it. And still, in the quiet between the good days, he found himself thinking of a small turf fire in a poor house in Ireland. His mother's voice, the smell of peat smoke, the faces of his brothers who had never thought much of him. The poor, hard, ordinary home he had been so glad to leave. Now in paradise it was all he could think of. Isn't that the strangest turn of the heart? We long for the far place while we are home, and long for home once we reach the far place. Necton had crossed the world for paradise, and paradise had taught him only how much he loved his poor green island. He told no one at first. He was ashamed of it. Who weeps for a turf fire when he has been given the deathless land? So he carried it alone, the way we carry the longings we think no one else would understand. But a longing kept secret does not shrink, it grows. Day by golden day, Necton's homesickness deepened until it filled him more than all the beauty of the island could. And at last he could carry it alone no longer. He went to find Bran. He found Bran resting in the orchard, content as the rest, and Necton knelt by him and said the thing he had been ashamed to say. I want to go home. I want to see Ireland again, even once, even just once. And something woke in Bran at that word home. He had buried it so deep under the gold that he had nearly forgotten he owned it. Now Necton had spoken it aloud, and it rose in Bran too, sudden and sharp and impossible to push back down. He looked around at the island that had given him everything, and he understood, with a quiet grief, that everything was not the same as home, that a man can be perfectly happy and still not be where he belongs. That is the heart of the whole voyage, and it is worth holding before the end. Bran had been offered no death, no sorrow, no loss, and a part of him still chose the green island where all three were waiting, because it was his. Bran gathered the company and told them. Some wept to hear it. Many would not come, they had no wish to leave paradise, and Bran did not force them, but enough chose to go that the boat would not sail empty. And Necton, of course, was first among them. When the chief of the women heard, she did not rage, and she did not plead. She only grew very still, and very sad, in the way of someone who has seen this happen before and knows how it ends. Stay, she said softly, one last time. Not as a command, as a kindness. There is only sorrow waiting for you out there. Here there is none. But Bran shook his head, and she nodded, as if she had always known he would. But before they went, she gave them a warning, the same one, in the end, that the first woman had sung in the hall so long ago. And this time there was no sweetness in it, only the plain, grave truth. Do not set foot on the land of Ireland, she said. Sail there, look on it. Call to it across the water if you must, but let no man's foot touch the shore. If it does, you will not be able to undo what follows. Bran heard her, and Necton heard her, and every man heard her. They swore it, of course they swore it. It seemed such an easy promise to keep. Look, but do not land. How hard could that be, for men so desperate to see home? But we have already seen the ending, you and I. We saw it in the very first minutes. a foot, ashore, and the years catching up all at once. So hold the warning gently now, and watch how an easy promise becomes the hardest thing in the world. The queen had one more gift, or perhaps one more mercy. She would not let them go without something to remember the island by. But what she gave was not gold, and not blossom. It was the thread again, wound now around the boat itself. Then she stepped back and gave them leave to go. The men climbed into the boat that had carried them across the world and now would carry them back. And Bran looked one last time at the deathless island he was choosing to leave. The chief of the women raised her hand in farewell. She did not weep, and she did not smile. She simply watched them go, growing smaller and smaller, until the boat was a speck and then was gone, and then she turned back to her endless gentle day. For the men in the boat, the sea was changed, the light dimmed back toward ordinary gray. The warmth left the water. With every stroke away from the island, they felt the soft, golden timelessness fall off them, and the old hard world begin to return. And as the world grew ordinary again, so did time. The slow golden clock of the island released them. They were back in the river of days now, the one that carries everything toward its end. They just did not yet understand how far down that river they had drifted. They rowed east for what felt like only a few days. Nektan set the pace, tireless, his homesickness now a kind of fuel. He spoke of his mother, his brothers, the turf fire. The others smiled to hear it. Soon, they told him, soon. And then low and gray-green on the eastern horizon, land, real land, the unmistakable shape of the Irish coast. The men cried out, half laughing, half weeping. After all the worlds they had crossed, here at last was the only one that had ever been theirs. They drove the boat toward the shore, hearts pounding. Nektan was nearly out of his skin with joy, and Bran felt it too, the wild gladness. But under it, faint and cold, the queen's warning stirred. Do not set foot on the land. As they came close, they saw people on the headland. Bran's heart leapt. His own folk come to greet him. He cupped his hands and called across the water, I am Bran, son of Feeble. I have come home from the sea. A silence fell on the headland. The people looked at one another. And then one old man called back across the waves words that turned Bran's blood to cold water. We do not know any living Bran, he said. But there is a Bran in our oldest stories. A Bran, son of Feeble, the old man said, who long ago rowed out to sea after a fairy woman and was never seen again. The bards still sing of him, but that was, and here the old man paused, that was hundreds of years ago. Hundreds of years. The single golden year on the island had been 3 or 4 lifetimes here. Everyone Bran had known was long dust. His fort was a grassy mound. His name had become a story old men half remembered. He had come home to a home that was gone. This is the moment the whole voyage was built toward, so let it land softly. Bran had not lost his home to an enemy or a fire or a war. He had lost it to time, to the simple, unstoppable passing of the years he had stepped out of. And in his grief, Bran almost forgot the boat held more than him. He almost forgot the warning. But there was one among them whose homesickness had been a fire for years, and who had just been told that everything he ached for was already centuries in the grave. For Nektan it was too much. The home he had crossed worlds to reach did not exist. The faces he had wept for were dust, and there it lay before him, the green Irish soil, close enough to touch. Some grief does not listen to any warning. Bran saw it in his face and lunged for him. Nektan, no, do not touch the land. Remember the warning. He caught at the young man's arm, but grief is stronger than any grip, and Nektan tore free. Nektan leapt from the boat. For one breath he was in the air over the shallows, young, whole, almost laughing with the joy of coming home. And then his foot came down on the green soil of Ireland, and the years he had outrun found him all at once. The moment he touched the land, the centuries crashed down on him. His copper hair went white. His skin sank to the bone. The young man aged 300 years between one heartbeat and the next, and crumbled gently into a small drift of gray ash on the green grass. Silence. The men in the boat could not move. The people on the headland drew back in fear. Where Nektan had leapt, joyful and young, there was only ash on the grass, and the wind already beginning to lift it. The warning had been true. It had always been true. For a long moment, no one in the boat breathed. The ash on the grass stirred in the wind. and the truth settled over the company like cold water. Nekton was gone, and the warning that had taken him bound every one of them now. The people on the headland were afraid. They had seen a young man leap from a strange boat and turn to dust before their eyes. They whispered and drew back, and some made signs against harm. To them, Bran's whole company were ghosts out of an old song. And Bran understood, in that cold moment, the full shape of what had happened to him. He could see his homeland, he could hear his people's voices, but he could never again set his foot upon it. The warning was not a punishment, it was simply the truth of his crossing. Here is the new grief, the one that comes after the first. Not that home was lost, but that it was right there, close enough to call to, and still forever out of reach. Sometimes the hardest distances are the smallest ones. His men looked to him, lost. What now? They could not land, they could not stay forever in a boat off a coast that thought them dead, and they could not go back. The land of women was 100 years behind them. They belonged nowhere now. That is the new threat the story raises now. Not a monster, not a storm, despair. The quiet danger that a man who belongs nowhere might simply give up, might let the boat drift and stop caring where the sea took it, or whether it took him anywhere at all. And for a while Bran did sink into that. He sat at the stern with his face in his hands. Everyone he loved was gone, his home was a story. His youngest, brightest companion was ash on a hill. What was the voyage for, if it ended like this? But then, faint across the water, he heard the old man on the headland calling again. Not in fear now, in wonder. Stranger, the old man called. If you truly are Bran of the song, then tell us. Tell us what happened out there. We only have the half of it. And in that question, Bran found the thing that would save him from despair. The story. His people had kept his name alive for 300 years, but they only knew the beginning. A man who rode away after a fairy woman. They did not know the rest, and he did. Here is the part the old myths quietly understood. When a person has lost everything else, sometimes the one thing left to give is the telling of it, to make the loss into something that can be passed on, to turn grief into a story that outlives the griever. So Bran stood in the boat and steadied his voice and began to tell them everything. The music in the hall, the woman with the silver branch, the flowering sea where a god rode by, the laughing island, the thread and the bronze house, and the long golden year that ate 3 centuries. He told them of Nekton, too, of the eager boy who leapt first to come and ached longest to return, and could not bear the few feet of water between himself and home. He gave the ash on the hill a name and a story, so it would not be only ash. The people listened the whole day through. They wept at the parts that asked for weeping, and wondered at the parts that asked for wonder. And as Bran spoke, the despair that had nearly swallowed him loosened its grip, finger by finger. But Bran knew that spoken words can be lost. The old man had carried his name 300 years, yes, but carried only the beginning, and even that worn thin. If the whole of it were to last, it needed to be set down in something harder than memory. So Bran took up his knife, and a smooth length of wood, and he began to carve. Not letters as you and I would write them, but ogam, the old Irish script of straight notches cut along an edge. Each cluster a sound, a line of strokes that could hold a name forever. Stroke by stroke, he cut the story into the wood, the branch, the song, the sea god, the islands, the thread, the golden year, and Nekton's name carved deepest of all, so that the boy who turned to ash would last in the grain of the wood long after the wind took his dust. When it was done, he held the carved stave up to the people on the shore. Here is the whole of it, he called. The voyage of Bran, son of Feeble, beginning to end. Keep it, sing it true, let it not wear down to half a song again. He could not bring the stave to land himself. His foot could never touch the shore, so he wrapped it carefully and set it on the water, and let the gentle tide carry it the last few feet that he could not cross. The story went home, even though he could not. A young woman waded into the shallows and lifted the stave from the water. She held it up so Bran could see it was safe in her hands, and across the gap of water and centuries, the voyager and the girl looked at one another, and something passed between them that did not need words. His story was safe now. It would live on the shore he could not walk, in the mouths of a people he would never meet. And maybe that is a kind of homecoming after all. Not your feet on the soil, but your story taking root there and growing long after you are gone. But now Bran faced the question the whole voyage had been carrying him toward. The story was home. He was not, and never could be. So where, then, was a man to go who belonged to no shore in any world? He looked east at the land. He looked west at the open sea. His men waited on his answer. The ones who had chosen to come back with him had come back to nothing, to a home centuries dead, to a shore that would turn them to dust if they touched it. They too belonged to nowhere now, and they too looked to Bran to say where they would go. And slowly, as Bran stood there, a strange calm came over him. Maybe belonging nowhere was its own kind of freedom. The land was closed to him forever. But the sea, the wide, wondrous, deathless sea, that was still open. It had always been open. It was, he realized, the only true home he had left. Stay with that thought, because it is a gentle one to carry towards sleep, that when every door behind you has closed, there may still be one open way ahead, not the way you wanted, but a way, and yours, and wide enough to give your life back to. He turned to his men and told them gently what he had understood. We cannot land, we cannot stay. But the sea is not a prison, it is a country, and a wide one. If you will come, we will sail it, not back to the island, onward to whatever lies past the edge of the songs. One by one, the men nodded. There was nowhere else for them to go. It was true, but it was more than that. There was something in Bran's quiet certainty that made the open sea sound less like exile and more like a calling, the same calling, perhaps, that had started it all. Bran looked one last time at the green shore, at his people gathered there, at the young woman holding his story safe, at the small gray mark on the grass that had been necked on. He raised his hand to them all in farewell, and many hands rose from the headland to answer him. Then he gave the order, and the oars dipped and the boat came around. The green Irish coast, home, and not home, and never home again, began to slip away behind them. And Bran did not let himself look back a second time. Some farewells you can only make once. And so the second voyage began, not a journey out toward a promised island, but a journey on by a man with no shore to return to, carrying his grief and his wonder together across a sea that would not let him die and a land that would not let him land. Where would the sea take him now? What lay past the edge of every song his people knew? Even the bards did not know. From that day, the old tale says, the wanderings of Bran were no longer counted among men, but we are not done. Tonight we follow a little further. So the boat sailed west, away from the land it could not touch, into waters no song had named. And a strange thing happened in the company. The grief did not vanish, but it grew quieter, the way a hard rain softens to a mist you can walk through. They no longer rowed toward something, they simply rowed and let the sea decide. And there is a peace in that. The old story knows, the peace of stopping the search for a moment, and trusting the water to carry you somewhere you could not have steered toward yourself. For days they drifted and rowed by turns. The sea was kind, the weather held soft, and though they had no home to reach, they began, quietly, to make a kind of home of the boat itself, of each other, of the rhythm of the days, of the wide sky overhead. One dawn, an island rose ahead of them, small and silver and very still. A single great tree stood at its center, and on the tree hung apples that caught the morning light like lanterns. The men slowed the boat, remembering the islands that had cost them so much. On the shore stood a single figure, an old man alone mending a net by the waterline. He looked up at the boat without surprise, as though he had been expecting it for a very long time, and he raised one weathered hand in a slow, peaceful greeting. Bran called out, careful as ever, and asked who he was. And the old man laughed softly, not the mad laughter of the trapped island, but a warm, tired, human laugh. I am a voyager, he said. Like you, I rode out long ago, looking for the blessed land, and I never found my way home. Bran felt a chill of recognition. Here was a man who had walked the same road, made the same choice, paid the same price. A voyager who could not go home, washed up on a quiet island at the edge of everything. He was looking, perhaps, at his own future. Are you sorry, Bran asked him, that you went? And the old voyager was quiet a while, looking out at the silver sea. No, he said at last. I lost my home. But I saw the flowering sea and the deathless isles and 100 wonders no one on land will ever know. I would not give those back. Maybe you know that kind of peace. The peace of a person who has lost a great deal and grieved it honestly, and come out the other side not bitter but quiet, not pretending the loss did not hurt, but holding the wonder beside it, and letting both be true. The old voyager offered them an apple from his glowing tree, one each, passed carefully boat to shore, never asking them to land. They were sweeter than anything on the land of women, and they did not bind, and they did not curse. They were simply a gift between travelers. They ate, and rested off the silver shore, and talked with the old man through the soft hours. He told them of seas they had not crossed, and islands he had passed, and the patterns the other world held for those who wandered it. Bran drank in every word. And before they left, Bran asked him one more thing. Is there an end to it? A place where a voyager like us can finally rest? The old man smiled and pointed west, into the brightening sea. There is, he said, but you will know it only when you stop running from it. You will know it only when you stop running from it. Bran turned that over and over as they rowed away from the Silver Island. He did not understand it yet, but he felt it was important, the kind of thing you are given before you are ready, so that it is waiting when you finally are. The sea carried them on, and now Bran rowed differently than before. On the first voyage, he had chased the deathless land out of longing. Now he moved through the wonders without grasping at them, looking, loving, and letting go. Loss, it seemed, had taught him how to hold things lightly. They came to an island where the streams ran with something brighter than water, and the very stones seemed warm, but the men did not land. They watched it pass with quiet pleasure. The way you might watch a beautiful thing you know is not yours to keep, and they rowed on, unhurt. This is the quiet turning of the second voyage. The islands had not changed. They were still beautiful, still full of traps for the grasping heart. But Bran had changed, and the same sea that had nearly swallowed him now simply carried him, because he had stopped trying to make it into a home it could never be. The men noticed it in him, and it steadied them. Where once they had looked to Bran for a destination, now they looked to him for his calm. He had no harbor to promise them, but he had something better, in the end, a way of being lost that did not feel like drowning. One evening, as the sun sank red into the western sea, Bran thought he heard, very faint and far off, a music. The same music, the slow, sweet song from the hall, the one that had started everything. He held still, hardly breathing, but the wind shifted, and it was gone. But it left a question burning in him. Was the woman with the silver branch still out there, somewhere west? Had she been waiting all this time, in the deathless land he had chosen to leave? And, this was the new thought, would she still welcome a man who had once turned away from her gift? He did not know. But for the first time since Nekton fell, Bran felt something other than grief pulling him forward, a small, warm thread of hope. Not the wild longing of the young man who first heard the song, a quieter hope, tempered by all he had lost, but hope, all the same. The nights at sea grew long and full of stars. The men would lie back and watch them wheel and tell the stories of their lives to one another, small, ordinary stories of homes long gone, of people 3 centuries dead. And in the telling, the dead were, for a moment, alive again. Bran listened to them all, and he understood something he wanted to carry. That this, the telling, the remembering, the keeping of one another's stories, was the thing the deathless island had never offered. On the land of women, nothing was lost. So nothing had to be lovingly kept, and so nothing meant quite as much. That is a strange and tender truth to hold towards sleep, that the things we love mean so much partly because we can lose them. That a deathless world, where nothing ends, might also be a world where nothing is truly treasured. The clock that frightens us is also the thing that makes the hours precious. As the second voyage went on, the men aged gently, naturally, the way the deathless island had never let them. Their hair grayed at the temples, lines came to their faces, and strangely none of them feared it. After the island, growing older felt like proof that they were home again in the real river of time. Bran aged too. The dark auburn went iron gray at his brow. The lines deepened around his sea-gray eyes, and he found he did not mind. Each gray hair was a day truly lived, truly counted, and after a year that swallowed 3 centuries unnoticed, every counted day was a small gift. They came upon islands still, now and then. An island where bells rang under the water. An island where the trees bowed in a wind no one could feel. They greeted each one and passed it by and carried its memory on. The sea was endless, but it was no longer empty. And all the while the faint music returned, a little clearer each time. On still evenings, Bran would catch it on the western wind, that slow, sweet song, and his heart would turn toward it. The deathless land was out there, and it seemed somehow to be calling him back. But Bran was wary of the calling now. He had answered a song once before, and it had cost him everything he loved. He would not be swept up so easily again. If the deathless land wanted him back, he would go to it with open eyes this time, knowing the price, and choosing anyway, or not at all. He gathered his men one evening and told them honestly what he felt. "The old song is calling me west again," he said. "I think it leads back to the deathless land, but I will not steer us there blind. We have paid enough to blindness. We will go slowly and watch, and choose with our eyes open." The men trusted him. They had no home to lose now, and the calling stirred something gentle in them too, a tiredness, a readiness, a sense that they had wandered long enough. They nodded, one by one, westward then, slowly, together, and the boat turned its prow fully toward the song. As they sailed toward the song, the sea began to change again, the way it had on the first voyage. The gray softened to gold. The swells grew long and warm. The light took on that honeyed glow they had felt once before, on the threshold of the blessed islands. The men felt the old timelessness brushing at them, soft and inviting, and this time it did not frighten them. They had made their peace with the river of years. They knew what the golden light could do, and they sailed into it anyway, clear-eyed, because this time they were not running from death. They were simply going home. And there, far ahead in the golden haze, a shape began to form on the sea. Not an island this time, a figure tall and bright, moving toward them across the water. The men shipped their oars and waited. Bran rose slowly to his feet, his heart beating hard. He knew, somehow, who it was. The figure came nearer, and the golden haze thinned, and there she was. The woman from the hall, the one who had sung the silver branch into his hand a lifetime, and 3 centuries ago. She stood on the water as easily as on a floor, and in her hand she held the branch still, its silver bells faintly ringing. She looked at him, older now, gray, lined, marked by all his losses, and she did not seem disappointed that he had once turned away from her gift. She seemed, if anything, gentler, as though a man who had grieved his way back to her was dearer than one who had never left at all. "You went home," she said softly, "as I knew you would, and it broke your heart, as I knew it would." She was not cruel in saying it. She was simply naming the truth they both knew. And then she said the thing Bran had crossed a second ocean to hear. "And now," she said, "you are ready." Now you're ready. Bran understood at last what the old voyager had meant. You will know the place of rest only when you stop running from it. He had spent his first voyage running toward the deathless land out of fear of loss, and that fear had poisoned the gift. Now the fear was gone. Now he could truly receive it. But Bran thought of his men. "I will not leave them," he said. "They followed me out, and home and out again," and the woman smiled. "They are weary too," she said. "The blessed land has room for all who are ready. None who came with you will be left behind," and the men, hearing it, wept with relief. "Then turn your boat," she said, "and follow. The way is open now and short," and she began to move back across the golden sea, the silver branch ringing softly, lighting a path on the water for the boat to follow. Bran took up his oar one more time, and the men took up theirs, and they followed her west. Let the boat follow that shining path a while, and let me tell you how the old Irish carried this strange idea of time. To them, the other world was not only a place, it was a different way of moving through the hours. There, time pooled and stilled. Here, it ran like a river, and the two did not keep the same count. The old stories are full of it. A man dances one night with the fairy folk and comes home to find 100 years gone. A woman steps into a green mound for an afternoon and returns when all her kin are dust. Bran's lost year was the same old truth, told large. Why did they tell it so often? Perhaps because they knew the feeling, even without the magic. That grief stops time and joy speeds it. That a hard year crawls and a happy one flies. The Irish simply made that ordinary truth into islands and mounds and a woman with a silver branch. And there is comfort in that. The comfort the old tellers meant to give. Your hard nights feel endless because they are slow, not because they are forever, and your sweetest hours fly because they are precious, not because they are stolen. Time is not your enemy, it is only keeping a different count, like the other world, just under the surface of your days. So when you watch Bran follow the silver branch into the deathless land, do not think of it only as magic. Think of it as a man finally moving at the pace his heart was always meant to keep, now back to the shining path, and the islands rising at its end. The shining path led them on through the golden sea, and the men rowed without weariness now. The water itself seemed to lift the boat forward, and ahead, low and bright and ringed in white blossom, islands began to rise from the sea, many of them an archipelago of light. This was Emain Oblak at last, the island of apple trees the very first song had promised. Not one island, but a whole bright country of them, scattered across the western sea like petals on still water, the deathless land. And this time, Bran came to it not as a fugitive from death, but as a traveler come home. The woman led them into a calm, bright harbor among the islands, where the water was clear as air, and the blossom drifted down to rest on its surface without sinking. Other boats lay at peace there. Other travelers walked the shores. The blessed land was not empty. It was full of those who, like Bran, had finally found their way. And here is the gentle question the old story leaves for us. Is this a heaven? A death? A dream? The tellers never quite say. Perhaps it is all of them, and none. Perhaps it is simply the name the old Irish gave to the place a long-traveled soul finally lays its weariness down. Whatever it was, the men felt it as peace. A peace deeper than the land of women had ever given them, because that first island had been an escape, and this was an arrival. The difference is everything. To flee into comfort is one thing. To finally come to rest is another. For the first time since the music came to his hall, Bran felt no pull in any direction. No longing for a far place. No ache for a lost home. He stood on the blossom shore, an old gray traveler at the end of every road, and he was simply and completely at rest. The woman walked beside him through the blossoming hills, and they spoke quietly of all that had happened. She did not pretend his losses were small. She did not say the voyage had been worth Nekton's life or his lost home. She only listened and let him grieve, here where grief was finally allowed to soften into something bearable. And maybe that is the truest gift the blessed land gives, not the absence of sorrow, but a place where sorrow can finally rest. Not a world where nothing is ever lost, but a shore where the things you lost can be carried gently instead of dragged. There is a difference. The whole voyage was learning it. His men found their own peace, too. They wandered the bright islands and met other travelers, voyagers from every age of Ireland, men and women who had heard their own music, answered their own calling, and come at last to the same blessed shore. The boat of Bran had joined a great long company of the brave and the lost. Among them, Bran found the old voyager from the Silver Island, the one who had given him an apple and a riddle. The old man smiled to see him. "You stopped running," he said. "So you found it." And Bran clasped his hand and understood that the riddle had been a map all along. Bran asked him gently about Nekton. Was there any place in all the Blessed Isles for a boy who never reached them, who turned to ash on a green shore an ocean away? And the old voyager looked at him kindly and said something Bran would hold forever. The boy reached the only home he truly wanted, the old man said. Not these islands, Ireland. He ached for the green land, and the green land took him into itself. His ash is part of that hill now. He is home, Bran, just a different home than yours. And Bran wept and was, somehow, comforted. Hold that, if you are still awake, that there may be more than one way home, that the boy who could not reach the Blessed Isles still reached the soil he loved and became part of it, that no longing is ever entirely wasted, even the ones that seem to end in ash. The days on the Blessed Islands were like the land of women's days in their gentleness, but different in their depth, for these were not days that erased you, they were days that healed you. Time still pooled and slowed here, but it no longer stole, it mended. And Bran felt himself, slowly, becoming whole. He walked the apple orchards where blossom and fruit hung together. He drank from streams that tasted of every clear water he had ever loved. He rested under trees that did not die, in a light that did not fade, on a shore where the only sound was the soft ringing of a far silver branch. And the longing that had ruled his whole life, the longing for somewhere else, for something more, for the far bright thing across the water, at last fell silent in him, not because it was denied, because it was answered. He had nowhere left to long toward. He was already there. But Bran had not forgotten the green shore and ocean behind him, or the people who had carried his name 300 years, or the young woman who had lifted his story from the water. He thought of them often with a tenderness that no longer hurt. and he wondered if there was one last thing he might do for them. He went to the woman with the branch and asked, "My story is on that far shore," he said, "carved in oakham, kept in the mouths of my people. But stories wear thin over centuries. I learned that the hard way. Is there a way to keep mine true, long after even this old voice is silent?" The woman smiled. "Your story will not wear thin," she said. "You carved it in ogham, and the ogham was copied onto skin, and the skin will be copied again and again down all the ages of Ireland. Monks will write it in their books. Children will hear it by the fire. Your voyage is already deathless, more deathless than these islands." More deathless than these islands. Bran turned that over and felt the wonder of it. He had crossed 2 oceans seeking a place where nothing ends, and all the while, the truly deathless thing had been the story itself, passing hand to hand, voice to voice, long after every island and every voyager had faded. And that, perhaps, is the quietest comfort of all to carry into sleep, that nothing truly loved is entirely lost if it is remembered. That a story is a kind of deathless land you can carry in your own chest. That the people and the moments you keep alive by remembering them are, in their way, already living in the Blessed Isles. Bran was content now. He had his rest, his men, his peace, and the knowledge that his story would carry on. He thought there could be no more to ask of any voyage. But the woman with the branch had one last thing to show him, the heart of the blessed land that he had not yet seen. She led him and his men up through orchards brighter than any they had seen, to the crown of the highest island. And from there, the whole blessed country opened below them, island after island of blossom and silver water, stretching west past sight, more beautiful than the first song had ever managed to say. And in the center of it all, where the brightest light gathered, Bran saw a figure he knew. Tall, sea-gray, riding a white-maned horse over the still water between the islands. Manannan, son of Lear, the lord of the sea, come, it seemed, to welcome the voyager into his own country at last. Manannan rode up to the foot of the island and looked up at the gray old traveler he had passed, a young man, on the flowering sea so long ago. "You have come a long road since we met," the sea god said. "You crossed my country twice. Few mortals ever cross it once. You have earned your rest, son of Feeble." And Bran bowed his gray head to the Sea Lord, and felt the last of his wandering fall away. He was not a king now, nor a fugitive, nor a man with no shore. He was simply a traveler who had come, by the longest possible road, exactly where he was always meant to arrive. Manannan spoke to him then of deep things, of how the worlds fit together, of the sea that joins them all, of the great turning of ages he had hinted at on the flowering plain so long ago. And this time Bran understood, where once he had only listened. The road had taught him the language of the sea god's wisdom. "There is a turning coming," the sea god told him. "Ages from now, when a great change will come over the green land you loved. New stories will rise, old gods will fade, but the sea will remain, and these islands will remain, and the voyagers will keep coming, age after age, looking for the same bright shore. You will not be the last." You will not be the last. Bran found a deep comfort in that. He was part of something far larger than his own grief, a long line of seekers, stretching back before him, and on past him, all of them reaching for the deathless shore. He had thought himself alone on the widest sea. He had never been alone at all. The sea god gave Bran a gift before he left. Not a thing to hold, but a knowing. He laid his great weathered hand on Bran's gray head, and in that touch Bran felt every sorrow he carried turn gentle, every loss become a part of him he could bear, every grief softened into the quiet richness of a life fully lived. Then Manannan turned his white-maned horse and rode away across the still bright water, growing smaller among the islands until the light gathered him in, and Bran stood watching, no longing in him now to follow. He had everywhere he needed to be, right here, beneath the blossoming trees. The days flowed on, gentle and bright. Bran and his men made their home among the blessed islands, not the restless waiting of the land of women, but a true belonging. They had crossed the whole world, lost almost everything, and arrived at the very end at a peace that no one could ever take from them again. And on the quiet evenings, Bran would walk to the western edge of the islands and look out at the endless bright sea and listen to the soft, far ringing of silver branches on the wind. He was not waiting for anything. He was not longing for anywhere. He was simply at last home and at peace to be exactly where he was. This is where the old tellers let his story rest. Bran, son of Feeble, who heard a music in his hall, and crossed 2 oceans and lost his home to time, and grieved, and wandered, and came at last to the blessed shore, not as a man fleeing death, but as a traveler finally ready to lay his weariness down. And somewhere on a green Irish hill, far across the water, his story lived on, carved in ogham, copied onto skin, sung by the fire, passing down the long years toward a night, much later, when someone tired and far from home would hear it again. Someone, perhaps, a little like you. Let the islands glow softly a while, and let me tell you about these voyage tales, the Imrama, before we close. Bran's was the first, but it was not the last. For centuries, the Irish told and retold stories of men who rowed west, seeking the blessed land beyond the waves. There was the voyage of Mael Duin, who sailed past 30 wondrous islands seeking revenge and found forgiveness instead. There was the voyage of Saint Brendan, a monk who, the old books say, sailed west and found a paradise that some later dreamers thought was a far new world across the ocean. They were never only adventure stories. The Irish understood the voyage as something deeper, a journey of the soul. The sea was a life, the islands were the trials and temptations and griefs we all pass. And the blessed shore at the end was whatever peace a soul might finally come to, if it sailed honestly enough. And that is why Bran's voyage still touches us, all these centuries on, because we are all in our way on the water. All of us passing islands we cannot stay on. All of us longing for some far bright shore, and grieving the homes we leave behind and learning slowly, the hard way, how to hold it all without drowning. So as we come back to Bran one last time, hold his voyage as your own a little. The music you have heard today, the far shore you long for. The home you grieve, the peace you are slowly, surely sailing toward. Now, back to the blessed islands, for the gentlest ending of all. The blessed islands turned slowly through their endless soft light, and Bran lived among them in deep peace. His grief had not vanished. It had ripened, the way late fruit ripens into something sweet and full and gentle to carry. He had become, at last, the old voyager on the shore, calm, whole, unafraid. New boats came, now and then, across the bright sea, other voyagers, other tired travelers, finding their way to the blessed shore. And it was Bran, often, who met them at the water's edge, who raised a hand in welcome, who told them gently that they had stopped running, and so they had found it. The man who had once been a lost king became a keeper of the shore, a gentle greeter of the weary, passing on the peace that the old voyager had once passed to him. The grief he had carried became the very thing that let him comfort others. Nothing he had suffered was wasted. It had all become kindness. That is a thought worth holding as your eyes grow heavy, that the hardest things you carry might, in the end, become the very gifts you give, that your griefs, fully grieved, can soften into a tenderness toward others that nothing easier could ever have taught you. Bran's losses became his welcome, yours can become something too. The seasons that were not quite seasons turned over the islands. The blossom never fell, the streams never froze, the light never failed. And Bran, who had once been so frightened of a place where nothing changed, found that he no longer needed change. He had found the one stillness that did not erase him. He had found home. And on the softest evenings the woman with the silver branch would walk beside him along the western shore, and neither of them would speak. There was nothing left to ask, nothing left to long for, just 2 figures on a blossom shore, in a light that did not fade, at the end of the longest road there is. The story of Bran does not end with a death. The old tellers were careful about that. They did not say he died. They said only that his wanderings were no longer counted among living men, that he passed out of our world and into the other. And there, as far as any mortal knows, he remains. So somewhere, the old story quietly promises, Bran is still there, still walking the blossom shore, still meeting the weary boats, still at peace beneath the trees that do not die. The voyage that began with a song in a hall has no ending, only a long, bright, gentle continuing, out past the edge of every map. And that is the whole of it, the voyage of Bran, son of Feeble, from a music in a firelit hall to a peace beyond the western sea. A story about longing and loss, and the long road home, and how home, in the end, was not a place he reached, but a peace he finally let himself receive. We have followed him a long way tonight, across 2 oceans, through laughing islands and golden years, past a god on a flowering sea, all the way to a shore where nothing ends. If your eyes have grown heavy along the way, that is good. That is exactly as it should be. The voyage was always meant to carry you here. There is only a little of the night left now, and it grows softer toward the end. So let the boat lie quiet at the blessed shore, and let Bran rest beneath his blossoming trees, and let yourself drift a little nearer to sleep as we come, gently to the last of the story. On the last and softest evening of the tale, Bran walked to the western edge of the Blessed Islands, where the bright sea stretched away past every horizon. The music was all around him now, the silver branches ringing soft on every tree, the song from the hall that had called him across 2 oceans come full circle at last. And there, on the still water before him, the woman with the silver branch waited one last time. She held out her hand, not a summons now and not a trap, just an invitation offered to a man at last ready to take it freely. "Come," she said softly. "The rest of the way is gentle," and Bran smiled and stepped toward her. He took her hand, and there was no fear in it and no grasping. The grief of his whole long life rose in him one last time and then settled, gently, into peace. Everything he had loved, everything he had lost, everything he had crossed the world for, gathered into a single quiet feeling that was, at last, enough. And then, together, they walked out across the bright still water toward the soft glow of the furthest islands, the ones past every map, where the light was gentlest of all. His men watched from the shore, unafraid, knowing they too would follow when their own evenings came, and the music rose around them all, sweet and slow and endless. The soft glow gathered them in, the way the sea had gathered the sea god, the way the green hill had gathered Nekton, the way the night is very gently gathering you now. The voyage of Bran was complete. He was home, and the only sound left in all the Blessed Islands was the soft, slow ringing of silver fading into peace. So what does this old voyage hold for us, here in the quiet? Begin with the silver branch, the thing that started it all. A small gift, ringing with a music from somewhere else. The branch is longing itself, that sudden pull toward something more, something elsewhere. We have all held it, the faint music in an ordinary evening that says there is another life, just over the water. Then the flowering sea, the gift Manannan gave with a word. The same gray water Bran crossed so wearily was, from another place, a meadow full of flowers. That image is a quiet medicine, the tired road you are on tonight might be, from some gentler angle, a thing of beauty. Nothing is only what weary eyes can see. Then the laughing island, and the man it kept. A whole people lost inside one feeling, unable to step out of it long enough to answer a stranger. There is a warning in it, gentle but real. Any single feeling held forever can become a trap, even a happy one. The old story knew that no one note, played without end, stays sweet. Then the thread, and the land of women, a welcome so soft it could not be fought, a comfort so complete that time itself dissolved inside it. The golden year that ate 3 centuries is the heart of it, a perfect ease where nothing aches and nothing changes, can quietly take everything, because to lose all your pain, you must lose all your home. And then Nekton, the foot that touched home, the years that crashed down. The most heartbreaking truth in the tale, told softly. Some doors only open one way. Nekton is the part of us that aches so hard for what is gone that we forget the warning. His grief is human, and his fall is not a punishment. It is just the cost of loving a home that time has carried off. But the deepest meaning is in Bran's 2 voyages. The first, he chased the deathless land out of fear of loss, and the fear poisoned the gift. The second, he came to the same shore having grieved, having lost, having stopped running, and only then could he truly receive it. You will know the place of rest only when you stop fleeing toward it. That is the gift the whole voyage carries to you. Peace is not a place you can chase down. It comes quietly, when you stop chasing, when you let the things you love be held lightly instead of gripped. And there is the great gentle reversal at the center of it all. Bran was offered no death, no sorrow, no loss, and a part of him still chose the green island where all 3 were waiting, because it was his. That is the truest thing the story knows, that a life without loss might also be a life without meaning. That the clock we fear is the same clock that makes our hours precious. We treasure things because we can lose them. And the story carries one more comfort. Bran's losses, fully grieved, became his kindness. He became the keeper of the shore, welcoming the weary with the very peace his own grief had taught him. So the hardest thing you carry tonight may yet become a gift. A grief, fully felt, can soften into a tenderness toward others that nothing easier could ever teach. Nothing you suffer honestly is wasted. And last, the deathless thing was never the island. It was the story, carved in ogham, copied onto skin, sung by the fire, passing down the long years, all the way to you, tonight. Nothing truly loved is entirely lost, if it is remembered. A story is a deathless land you can carry in your own chest. The ones you keep alive by remembering them are already in their way on the blessed shore. Longing, comfort, loss, and the long way to peace. That is the voyage of Bran, and that, in some quiet way, is the voyage of every heart that ever heard of far music and wondered what lay across the water. The woman with the branch was right. Bran's story did not wear thin. It was carved and copied again, all the way down to us tonight. It was written down well over 1,000 years ago. The Imram Brain, the Voyage of Bran, one of the oldest tales in all of Irish memory, set on skin by monks who loved the old stories enough to keep them. And the blessed land Bran sailed to never faded from the Irish heart. They kept telling of it under other names. Tir na Nog, the land of the young, where heroes sailed and time stood still. The hero Oisin would sail there too, centuries later in the telling, and live in its endless youth, and like Necton, fall to sudden age the moment he touched Irish soil again. Bran's truth echoed on, over and over. And the Apple Islands sailed into other people's dreams as well. Avalon, where a wounded king was carried to be healed across the water, is the same old hope, the Isle of Apples beyond the Western Sea. Even St. Brendan's famous voyage carried Bran's shape, a westward sail toward a promised land, which later dreamers wondered might lie across the whole ocean, in a world not yet found. The flowering sea, Manannan's gift of seeing the waves as a meadow, became one of the most beloved images in all of Celtic story. Poets returned to it for centuries. They never quite let it go. And Manannan himself sailed on through the ages, the sea god who rode the waves, lending his name to the Isle of Man, watching over voyagers in story long after his temples were gone. Every tale of a land beyond the sea owes something to that first small boat, every dream of a deathless shore, every story of time lost in a fairy country sails in Bran's old wake. So the woman's promise held. Bran is more deathless than the islands he sailed to, and tonight, by hearing his voyage, you have kept him sailing on, one more time, across one more quiet sea. The story is told now. The boat is small on the silver water, and the music is fading, soft and slow, into the dark. There is nothing left to reach for tonight, no island to find, no shore to cross, just the gentle rocking of the water and the wide, quiet sky. And somewhere far ahead, past the edge of sleep, another story is already waiting, somewhere colder, older, a different kind of fire, but not tonight. Tonight you can let it all drift. The boat will keep itself. The sea will hold you gently while you rest. We'll be here, on the far shore, whenever you're ready. There is always another old story waiting. No hurry, no test. Let your breathing slow now the way the swells slow in, like the tide drawing back out, like the wave letting go. Everything you carried into tonight can rest here too. Set it gently on the water. Let the quiet sea carry it for a while. The far music is almost gone now, just a faint silver ringing somewhere over the water. Softer, softer still. You are safe. You are warm. You are held by the same wide quiet that held every traveler who ever crossed this sea. Rest now. The voyage is done and the shore is near. Good night. Sleep gently. The old sea will carry you the rest of the way.